Hi, it's Wendy, and today's quick tip of the day is all about how to interrupt somebody politely. Yes, we've all faced those situations where we're with someone, they are talking non-stop, and it's usually hard to get a word in edgewise. But we do want to try to interrupt, but how do we do it in a respectful, professional, polite way? Well, I'm going to give you some tips and see how you go. The first one is you can use a polite interjection. So wait for a natural pause if you do find one in the conversation and inject with a very polite phrase such as, "Excuse me, may I add something? Look, if you don't mind, I'd just like to interject at this point. Can I just stop you at this point, please?" So if you use these phrases and you use them with a very respectful tone of voice and being mindful of things like please and excuse me, then that allows you to seek permission to contribute to the conversation and to get yourself into it and politely interrupt. The second point to consider, and my second tip, is to use nonverbal cues. So if the opportunity to interject verbally doesn't arise, try to use some nonverbal cues to signal that you've got something to say. You might maintain eye contact. You might even raise your hand slightly or raise your eyebrow or just nod. You can give some nonverbal cues that can indicate to the other person that it's your turn, that you would like to say something as well. They may be cues that could catch the other person by surprise, and they might momentarily pause, which could be your in. That could be the way that you can then get in and interrupt that conversation in a very polite manner. The next tip I want to give you is to to acknowledge and paraphrase. So if you do need to interrupt because perhaps you haven't understood something, perhaps something is not very clear and needs a little bit of clarification, you could just say, "Look, can I please interrupt? I do want to clarify something," and take that opportunity then to summarize, rephrase, and clarify what they have had to say. You could ask some compelling questions as well, some questions that pick up on what they have said. So it indicates to them that you are following what they're saying, you're following their conversation, but you just want to clarify it, and that gives you your into the conversation. So what that approach does, it shows that you value their perspective, and it helps also create a much smoother transition into the conversation. Now, the last tip, apologize and be concise. So when you're interrupting, please, apologize briefly. You can say, "Look, I'm very sorry to interrupt you," or, "Look, I do apologize, but I do need to interrupt you. I need to let you know something," or, "I wanted to mention this." Being respectful of the speaker's time and keeping that interruption very concise and brief will also help as well. This is not necessarily your chance to go off on a big rant and a big ramble as well. You can be concise, be brief, be direct, but also just add that kind of little politesse, as we like to say in French, that little "excuse me, but I do have something to say" there. So interrupting in general should be used sparingly, because the whole idea of very effective communication is to listen more than you speak. So active listening is the key. However, sometimes you do need to step in and you do need to interrupt that conversation. But there are ways of doing it. There are ways of doing it that preserves the dignity of the conversation, that still shows value and respect for what the other person is saying. So it's all about striking a good balance. So I wish you luck with that.